Alright guys, such Kremp again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The OpTic guys telling all as to what happened this most recent season. Scump especially revealing how close he was to returning to competitive play this year and how he thought it was going to happen going into Major 3 and then just fell short at the final moment thanks to what happened with Pred. And also Mercules revealing what has changed since winning the World Championship on OpTic and all that means for his career and his future. And he says that really not much is different. He's just grinding as always, getting ready for the Esports World Cup. Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Let's dive right in. Just a lot of talk about the coaching stuff as well, who's gonna, do the best job coaching the team. Of course, there was no shout out for Rambo here. I know there's been lots of talk about it over the last few days in the comments to see, damn, if Surge were on stage with Rambo at Champs, would that have made a difference? Possibly, we'll see what the teams are gonna do. The reality is these teams have only had a couple of days of practice with their coach actually calling the shots behind them, so, could well turn out to be a very different story when we get out there to Riyadh in terms of which teams are going to do what. And Hex and Dashy actually talked about this on an Eavesdrop episode a couple of years ago, and we're talking about, the willingness to see how this would transpire. So we've not seen much reaction yet from the players, interestingly enough. Some players talked about it, Beans talked about it, Purge talked about it, but mostly it's from the coaches. That you guys were making some funny comments that were suggesting, like, look, it's the coaches who are complaining about it because they're the ones who've got to do more work. And maybe there's some element of truth to that. I do understand the logic of the coaches to say, damn, the coach is on the stage, it reduces the skill gap of the players. But as Clay said, as we saw in yesterday's video, he was like, he made a wrong call out and it costed his team. And he was like, damn, this is, what I mean? Like, I've got to lock in here and make sure that whatever I say is bang on the money and I make the correct decisions and I make the correct calls and I call out the correct things. And when you're looking at 4 monitors as opposed to just looking at 1, maybe it's even sometimes more challenging to do that. So there's an interesting debate there, really, as to the fact that, yeah, the coaches, if you allow them on the stage, they can take some weight off of their team in terms of communication, but also they've got to be damn good at it, because if the other coach is doing a better job, it is going to hurt their team. And instead of the coaches just sitting there behind the team watching the scrims for the entire season and then turning up to the event and, bringing out a little notebook on what the other team does and prepping the team before their game, now the coaches have to properly work. They've got to be up there on the stage all the time talking to the team. That's not an easy thing to do. And it's interesting observation maybe that are the coaches just complaining because it means that they have to do more work for the same money. Because it's the coaches who are the ones complaining about this, really. It's retired players and it's coaches. Whereas a lot of the players, we've not heard too much reaction from it. And Dashy a couple of years ago was suggesting that he would at least like to see how it went. In other sports, as you guys have made plenty of comments on in the comments, that in other sports this is standard, right? Coaches can speak to, call out to, not message exactly, but you know what I'm saying, talk to their players during the games, and that's perfectly reasonable to see. So yeah, we'll see what happens and what this means for Call of Duty. I know there's been some, it might devalue the event to some degree because just it's different to what we've had so far this season, but I definitely think it makes things a little bit exciting. Now, Pred was running some search and destroy chals, and I mean, I know that Shotzzy was probably cracking up when he saw this. Illy tweeted up, never switch, never folds, and Shotzzy was mentioning the Yoda King in the replies. It feels a long time ago now, the Yoda King stuff. If you guys aren't familiar with it, it's when Illy, let's just say, briefly changed the gamer tag, and then in due course he has gone back to Illy COD. But he was playing a lot of chals for a lot of money over the last few days. It's been good to see this, actually, that there's some sort of search and destroy chal scene still going. Illy, Shotzzy, Huke and Kremp versus Pred, Sib, Real and Neptune. Pretty nice couple of teams there, it's got to be said. Before we get to some of the other drama, there was a big debate on this, ranking the seasons of every COD Champs winner. Now, Temp, Attach and JCap went through and they put together this tier list of all-time Champs winners. Now, this is always going to be highly controversial, but I thought we should at least have a look at it. So, there have been plenty of World Championships now. I mean, it's kind of remarkable to think about, but 2025 was, what, the 13th ever World Championship? What's this? 8, 11, yeah, 12, 13, 13th ever. OpTic have now won 3 of them. Envy kind of have won 2 with Envy and then Dallas Empire. This is the order they put them in. We can start from the top, really, because I don't think anyone's really going to dispute the S tier. Now, it is a debate as to how exactly you consider this. I think the way that I would look at it, really, is, okay, maybe how impressive was that team who won Champs over the course of the season? Because if they dominated the season and they dominated Champs, that probably puts them right up there. But I guess you could also just say, well, all that matters is champs, how they performed at the World Championship with respect to the rest of the season. Maybe that doesn't even matter. So a team like Complexity, they have to be number one all time, I would say. Maybe you could say OpTic, but the thing is, like, OpTic, maybe FaZe, but FaZe only won 3 series to win it. It's just they dominated all year, and they were never going to lose that World Championship in 2021. So, Atlanta FaZe, yeah, sure. OpTic Gaming, let's not forget they did lose in the winners' finals to Envy, and they had to battle back, and they battled back incredibly well and won, but they weren't undefeated at the tournament. Complexity won that Ghost Champs with such ease, and they dominated everything before and after. So, there's really no doubt that is, I think, a feasible S tier, because all of those teams put on incredibly dominant performances at Champs. Yeah, OpTic lost in the winners' finals, but they still went on to win it dominantly in the grand finals against Envy in the end, who were going for themselves for the back-to-back. And of course, all of those teams also dominated pretty much the rest of those seasons too. So I think there's no real debate on that. The rest of it gets pretty controversial, right? I think most people have EG as maybe the most fluky winner of all time because they didn't really do much all year. People do forget though that EG came second at CWL Seattle a few events before. They came second to Rise Nation. They lost in the finals, but they were competitive there, and they fixed their search and destroy for champs. But EG down in the D tier, Denial in the C tier, interestingly enough, even though JCap and Attach were on that team, right, that won the World Championship in 2015. But, before and since, the team blew up shortly after that, and changes are made, so I guess that's fair enough. And then really we're looking maybe more CDL era. United were very dominant themselves, and they won in 2019. Farico were pretty dominant when they won back in 2013, the inaugural run. Envy were very impressive as well. And then you're looking CDL era, right? Of the CDL era, they've got FaZe being the best, and then OpTic last year being the second best, with OpTic this year then being in kind of the third tier with the Thieves team and the Dallas team and the New York team, which is, maybe there's some element of truth to this as well. Probably the big one that I would debate here, I guess, is New York subliners. Even OpTic this year, you could argue it, but then you could say, well, OpTic last year, they won champs also very dominantly. Really, they never looked that much like they were going to lose, certainly when they got to the finals. And they also won another event that season, so maybe that puts OpTic last year over OpTic this year. Of course, OpTic this year were a disaster, but the team at Champs is a very different team, and we'll discuss that in a second. But the New York thing, and they nearly won it without dropping a map, of course, until finals, where they did face some stiff competition. But New York, it's an interesting one for them because, yeah, they had a couple of difficult events during the season where they bombed out early, but they won 3 events that year and they won Champs Finals 5-0. So, you got to think maybe they should have been a bit higher. I don't know. That's my take. Intrigued to your thoughts in the comments section below. But a clips I wanted to share from the OpTic Roundtable they did a few days ago now, and there were lots of interesting things to mention here. Look, I mentioned the other day that there wasn't any drastic new announcements, so I decided not to mention this at least for a couple of days because there was no real major bombshell revelation. But nonetheless, interesting what Scump said on how the team was looking to get him back, because he mentioned in a podcast a little while ago that he was at least close to returning, but I don't think we really recognised until this episode just how close that was. And Scump was talking to Pred after the event in Dallas at the after party. I was there, and I didn't see this conversation take place. But Scump was telling AG, look, maybe I'm making a return right after this tournament. But as we know, that didn't transpire because very shortly afterwards, Pred was dropped and Huke came back in, and then after all that, it kind of shut down the potential Scump return idea because they were like, well, Scump was down to do it. It's just the team then decided to get rid of Pred again because things weren't going to plan, and then, Huke was coming back in, and they thought, well, okay, maybe we're just going to try this first before we then call up, the Ginger Ninja, which was never eventually required because they found Mercules, and the rest is history. And then that is the other clip that I wanted to share really on the Mercules side, just because I find this kid's attitude very refreshing and down to earth, and I think he does strike me as someone who has the mentality to go very, very far in this esports.
Just can show it in matches. Seth texted me that he can play, or is he trolling? Looking for entertainment. So now, yeah. So this is, I know, I was gassed. I'm like, we gotta get Seth. Bro, we could actually do, I was like, we could do damage with Seth.
There was a chance.
There was a chance.
I was trying to force it.
There was a real chance.
There was a real chance.
Dude, I remember, I don't know if I've shared this, but I was talking to AG after our major. I think it was after our major.
At the after party?
Yeah, I was talking to AG. I was like, yo, I'm thinking about coming back. I'm actually down to play. Like us, AG, me. And then he texted me the next day at like 1:30. He's like, I got dropped. And I was like, wait, what? Literally next day. I'm hungover. We were drinking. It was Sunday at the event. All out.
He said what?
He texted me 1:30 next day. He's like, yo, I just got dropped. And I was like, swear I had nothing to do with that. I don't even know what's going on. I thought we were about a team. And then that just like kind of went away. But there was a chance.
There was a chance.
Thank God I didn't, because I'm not dropping 1.4s. Like, I'll give you a good 1, maybe 1.1. You're making the right play.
Well, you're also 30. You're 29 at the time.
I think
change.
we would have
It's a
broke.
big change.
I actually think we would have broke against him. I swear. Like, maybe I'm just delusional, but like, we would. I swear.
Then
I thought I had to come save the team. I was like, bro, these guys are horrible.
Like, how many times
I'm watching and I'm like, I can do this. Like, I'm watching POVs. People are getting turned on. I'm like, bro, I'm not getting turned on like that. I can hold top. I can hold top bars. Like, chow me.
Dashy, a day later, Sunday, is Seth serious about coming back? I'm so done to run it with him.
That's my dog. That's my
I'm
dog.
telling you, I was like, let's do this,
Run
bro.
this- At this point, fuck it.
Yeah,
Let's
I
run.
thought he was gonna be like, yeah, it's done. I was waiting for that.
I'm bringing vibes.
Nah, I literally couldn't tell if he was trolling. I actually remember that.
That shit's crazy, bro.
So the question still remains, has your life changed drastically, or are you still pretty much like...
Not really, besides like the stream, my stream's blowing up. I'm still just playing COD. So not really changed too
He's still
much.
listening to King Von.
Living on my own, so
He's still listening
that's
to
the
Drill.
only thing that changed.
Living on your own, how's that been?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah, like my washer's like broken though. New washers.
Dashy also mentioned in another podcast that, like, yeah, they're looking in for the Esports World Cup, but Mercules was asked, yeah, how are things different? Because many players would be in a very different position, right? They'd just won champs with OpTic. I mean, they've won, what was it, 800k for first at $200,000 each. I mean, Mercules was getting offered a contract, we think, by Cloud9 for something in the maybe very, very low six-figure range, but, you know, something respectable, and that would have been probably the first good money that he's made in his whole life. And now he's got a stream. The green wall are there. And that's what he said. So the stream's obviously going crazy when he turns to stream, when he gets loads of love in there. Like, I'm sure he's making good ad money, sub revenue, and all this type of stuff. But for Mercules, things have changed so drastically in the last few months. Like, he went from being in challenges, probably not exactly struggling to make ends meet. I don't know enough about Mercules, you know, past and history, and we know what Drazah had to say about sacrificing an awful lot to give it a go. But Merc was in a position a few months ago where the offer from Toronto to go to their bench for minimum salary was probably kind of compelling to be like, damn, you know, I've been grinding challenges for a little bit. I've got an offer in the league. That's a big deal. And then Cloud9 come knocking with a bigger offer. And then all of a sudden, Mercules is on the OpTic bag, with the OpTic green wall bag, with the champs bag. And like, you know, you would expect that to affect him. You'd be like, oh, you're buying this car or whatever. You know, lots of people are in that position. But Mercules is like, no, I'm just, you know, living on my own, grinding, playing cards. And I think he just strikes me as the type of personality, very level-headed, who can potentially go a long way. Because not to compare and contrast too much with Ghosty, because I also think Ghosty, really smart guy, got his head very much screwed on. But he wasn't as, I wouldn't say inoffensive exactly, but we know that at the end of that season in Modern Warfare 2, Ghosty got dropped, and partly it was because that Ghosty was not, you know, exactly meshing with the team, but Shotzzy was talking about it and Dashy was talking about it, that Ghosty was just a little bit difficult to handle maybe, and so I think that's improved over time, and I rate Ghosty highly as a player now on Thieves, but I think for Mercules, there's no real such concern there. It just feels that Merc is always going to be a very solid teammate regardless of the circumstances, and obviously is pretty talented as well to boot. So very much interested to your thoughts, as always, in the comment section below. Just one thing I wanted to shout out real quick. Real has launched his own YouTube channel. So this is really cool. I'll always give credit to the players who decide to make content. I think there's a lot of potential right now as well. The Spanish scene with the success of Heretics getting back in business this season probably has a lot of room to grow still, and room to get back online as it was a few years ago. So the fact that Real supporting that, thought that was great to see. So wishing him the best with his content. Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.